Sorry about that. Okay, so when we're in our census, and I'm going to show you a live community just because I don't have this type of census in my demo site. So we'll just pop into here. When I'm in a resident and I want to do a census change for somebody, and this is what I'm talking about, what the nurses should not do. We do not want you to add one of the discharge, return not anticipated, scheduled move out, or discharge. None of these you should be using, the last four. The only ones that a nurse should be using after someone moves out or expires is a therapeutic leave, tenant discharge, continue rent, or therapeutic leave, tenant expired, continued rent. That rent is going to continue based upon that person's lease, and that housing manager, the LALD, they will check that and make sure that billing knows the date to discharge the rent. So just put them on a leave if you're a nurse because you want them to go on hold and care assist, but do not discharge them as a census, please. Because once you do that, we lose all our senior living capability of charting. Does anyone have any questions on discharging? Here is a discharge checklist that we have. And this would be part of your clinical note that pharmacy knows, physician knows, family knows. Do not discharge in census, it tells you right here. Destroy or return meds, the clinical note, and then fill out a discharge summary. Make sure you're searching for anything in progress under forms, under eval, under service plans. How you communicate in your community is important. And then in Minnesota, make sure you're doing that discharge roster and then communicating to your housing or business office once you're all done. Any questions on discharging? Okay, I don't really see anything in the chat. Okay, let's go back to our other one, our EMAR work list. I've had a few questions on the EMAR work list. And I was just seeing if Madonna's were on, but I don't see any of the Madonna facilities on. Okay. Me or Megan can contact them later, but the EMAR work list, one of the questions that came up was on the work list and who can see what. So in Care Assist, so let's just jump to Care Assist real quick so I can explain what we're going to go over. When I sign in on my EMAR work list, that is my assignment for the day. So if I'm going into my community and I say yes to an EMAR work list, and today I'm working on the East Hall, I will see these residents. I will have access to the EMAR. Whatever EMAR tasks that I have may be different depending on my work list. But if you'll see on this one, I can see all meds, PRNs, and treatments. For those residents in my work list, we have a to-do list, and everything on that evaluation is a shared to-do list between the nurses and the aides. So we do share the to-do list. The EMAR goes by what you set up for that resident through the EMAR work list setup. So back over to our facility under Elite is where we manage our EMAR work list setups. If we have a med aid or a nurse passing meds, that is going to dictate what EMR work list flow sheets I am going to see. So under your EMR work list setup, which is usually on the right-hand side, you're going to see anything here for your EMR work list. You have one that says Care Assist. You don't touch that one. That one is our setup one. So just know that that is not one that you would go into, but you would go into any of your teams, your nurse only, whatever you call them. Under team one, if I have my nurse passing meds and I don't want them to see the meds, I can take off that flow sheet so they can't see the medications. They still need access to the EMR because that's just how Care Assist works. So we can't take off the security token under Care Assist because then they won't see their to-do list either. So we need to have that on, but we can control the general flow sheet. So these are anything under orders, what they're going to see. Typically, we shouldn't put general on a work list because general would be like PT, OT orders, anything that's generally that we don't need to sign off. So I'm not sure why this team has it on here. You know, well, we're trying to clean up the flow sheet orders. But I would maybe only have them see the COVID monitoring because maybe that's all that team does. And then their to-do list. They may not do any meds, but maybe they have some treatments. Maybe they have vitals. So you really manage everything they can see on the EMR through your EMR work list setup through the facility tab, if that makes sense. But the to-do list runs from the evaluation. And so everybody that has those residents will see everything off that to-do list. So that is not controlled by any EMR work list. It's only controlling those residents. So if I go back to the beginning and I choose a different team, sorry, I'm in a bad Wi-Fi area at this community. If I go back and I go, I want to be the nurse only today, then I'm going to see every resident because I'm the only nurse. And so I see all my residents. But my EMR, you're going to see that I see the labs and the nurse only. So these are my EMRs. And I have this medication that I give as the nurse because it's a special medication and the family wanted only the nurse to give it, let's just say. So this is on my work list. The aides would not see this because it's under the nurse only flow sheet. Or if it's a lab, or if it's a doctor appointment, whatever it is that I only want my nurse to see a vitamin B12 injection, that will be managed under my EMR. But you'll see, I see everything as the aides do under the to-do list for the scheduled tasks. So, which is nice because me as a nurse, I can follow and make sure the aides are doing their assigned tasks. Any questions on the EMR work list? As the nurse does have one section that she needs to check on every day besides the EMR. Under the to-do list, the easiest way to find that is changing the view of your page because the first view is all about time. So it starts at midnight and ends at midnight. So if I go to the task grouping, so I change it to do all my tasks by each group. I'm gonna wait for this to load. You'll see now this is great because now I'm grouping it and I know everybody who has a bath today. We don't need those bath lists hanging up that are never correct. And I know we think they are, but every time I'm auditing, it does not match the service plan. And this is what we really need to focus on. The aides need to come on here and do it here and not off a paper list. So here's my bathing. But the nurses have a quality check that they need to do every week on those med cards or meds in the room. And that is a question, and that is something that the residents are paying for, but it's called med/treatments. This is where you come here to find your weekly service, and what it's saying is, I am guaranteeing that I'm going to see David today. I'm going to look at his meds. I'm going to review the MAR. I'm going to make sure that everybody was compliant, signed off his meds. Did he use any PRNs? I'm checking for anything expired. If he has narcotics, I'm checking those narcotics to verify that there was nothing missing in the last week. Do we have any concerns? Do I have enough meds for the next week? Do I need to order those medications? Because the licensed nurse is ultimately responsible. Even if your aides are ordering, you need to make sure that they ordered, or you have to order yourself. And then if we need to call someone to order meds, then we need to call. When I'm in the room or at the treatment cart, I can easily go to the EMAR tab and go to active orders for that resident. Let me find someone who has some meds. And I can easily go in and look at the last week and say, oh, did he use any medications? Nope, this one's good. He didn't use any PRNs. And I can quickly go down to each med and see what was given, make sure nothing was held, or a lot of times you'll see supply not available, supply not available. Well, we shouldn't be seeing supply not available on any of the medications, especially for a long period, because you're guaranteeing every week that you've checked them and you've ordered them. So that's a quick way to do it together. And then once you're done with that med treatment check, then you as the nurse have to sign off this tile. And so it's very easy. You just write complete and done. And so all those tiles should be signed off by the nurse and not the aides. And you'll see that once it's done, it drops to the bottom. So your med treatments is the question on the evaluation. You know, how many meds are we managing? And all those quick notes. That's where you get those quick notes here, the med reconciliation or the med check. In every facility, we want doing this weekly. That is a Benedictine standard that was brought up by the clinical team to reduce med errors. And so if you find someone hasn't had a medication for 2 weeks, then I would question if your nurses are doing these med checks. And I think Barb Westberg can account to how important these med checks are. If she's listening. Any questions on the med checks? I do have a checklist for those if you feel like your nurse is struggling with the med checks. You can go ahead and have them do a nice checklist, and it's everything that they need to do, making sure that the pens and inhalers and eye drops have dates opening, the controlled substances, checking for expired meds, looking for omissions. It's different ways to look at that. You can run a report out of Elite, or you can look at the EMAR through the Care Assist. Signing off the to-do list, it tells you how to go to that grouping. And then you will find that you click done and it walks you right through the process. And you will find this under the AL Toolkit in eSource. Has anyone used the batch charting? So someone brought that up to me today, how wonderful they thought the batch charting was. Under your facility tab, you can go ahead and do all your COVID vaccines or your flu vaccines under preventative health batch. Pretty much walks you through, these are the things that you can go through and batch document. And it walks you through the whole thing. I'm not going to take you through it today, but you can select your units. You can deselect each person that didn't have that vaccine, but it is very quick and saving us a lot of time instead of doing each resident. So it's under facility, preventative health, batch entry. Has everyone used it? Perfect. Go back to our sheet and see what's next. Month-end reconciliation. I still see that we're having a problem with our month end, and ideally, we really want the nurse, the housing manager, the biller, whoever is involved to sit down every month before your billing goes out a couple days previous and go through your levels in senior living, go through what we're actually charging in elite, and do a comparison and make sure that everybody is on the right billing cycle, that everybody has the correct levels, and then go through any of your extra services and note if those are chargeable. So let's start with elite. And of course, I don't think my report that was supposed to be fixed is fixed yet. Let's just see if it is. Let's look at Shaka. So these tell me what the levels are. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. So it looks like the levels are coming out correctly on the resident care level report. What's nice about this report is I can go ahead and go through the month and I can just see if there was a change in the last 30 days. So if I am up on my billing every single month, I shouldn't have to look at every person. I should be able to just come in here and note if there was a change. And you can see, I don't see any changes in here, but let's say on Phyllis, I saw she went from a 3 and then on the 13th, she changed to a 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. That would trigger me then to go into Matrix and find that particular resident. I have to keep moving the screen here. And I would go into that residence and I would say, well, do we have her on the right level? And I would go into my charge entry under the resident and it would tell me what level they're on. The level here needs to match the level in the clinical evaluation. So you can run any report you want to find the levels, or you can export this to an Excel spreadsheet just from the front of the evaluation page, and it will tell you everybody's levels. And so what I can do with these is sometimes I just go ahead and delete some of these columns so I can define it a little bit more what I need to know. And then I could look for the person. And I could go down and make sure they're on whatever level this says they're on. I can see their points, and then I can go over here and match in my matrix charge entry. So does anyone have trouble finding out the level and then coming into Matrix Elite and finding out the level we're actually billing? They do need to match. I do at least a yearly audit, and then I'll send you my findings, and then you can go ahead and look at that. But we also need to run a couple of these reports from our point of care section under facility reports. And we're looking for this point of care extra service report. And so we want to make sure that we're getting any extra services that we need to for everybody that lives in our building. And so I always run the extra service report. And I always tell the nurses it's kind of nice if you run it weekly, because it is a lot of work to go through it each time. And so you'll see here, if I go through these, I can tell that a med/treatment completing a weekly med setup, that they are actually documenting this wrong. Instead of going to the to-do list, they're going under tasks to complete this, and it's showing up as extra. So, you know, that's something we'd want to correct with that nurse. This is a great one. I know it's extra, although the minutes were forgotten. They did an extra INR check. So this person could potentially be billed for a 15-minute service because that would be the minimum is 15. Here's another great, and I always tell the staff, put the word extra so I know it's extra. Here's a dining service extra requested box for supper. So that could be billed out to that resident. Again, I believe the nurse is documenting in the wrong spot for her med box setups here. You see a lot of them. That's something we can talk to her about, because I bet on the mischarting, we'll see that in the mischarting a lot. Here's an extra INR. So these are great. You can go ahead and print this off. You can go ahead and cross off what you don't want to charge and write okay next to some and write RN charge or RA charge, and you could hand this right to billing if you want to charge these. So these, you will look at them to see if they have extra points in their service level. So if they're, you know, at 42 points and they have an extra 15 points a day of extra time, I may not charge these, but if they're sitting at the top of a point level, then I may decide to go ahead and charge. Some people charge above and beyond regardless of their points. It's kind of up to your facility. But I do run this. I suggest you run it weekly and keep up on those extra charges. It makes it much less data entry for your billing people if you do it more often than at the end of the month. If you have a large building and you have a lot of extra services, it's pretty hard to do a charge entry on every single one of those for 30 days. It's nicer if you go ahead and do that every week for them. And then, of course, I always do the other report of the compliance report for senior living, because that will tell me if we have mischarting, and I run it for the same days. Sorry, whoever I'm picking on here. And I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna make sure that all that mischarting wasn't accidentally charted as a task. So I kind of go back and forth, and that's why I think the nurse should do these weekly, because it is a little time consuming until you get your charting down. But what I'm looking for real quick is those med/treatments. On 511, if I saw that extra charge and then I see it here, I know that's just she's charting in the wrong spot. So then we can kind of go through this and get it fixed up. And then that extra service report can go right over to the billing person. You'll notice now with one of the new updates with senior living, if I'm on a resident and I go over to Care Assist and I sign in to Care Assist now, it should take me right past signing in at all and take me right to that resident. So it'll bypass the whole login situation and bring me right into their section. So I had a few calls on this, which it doesn't always work for me because I have way too many communities, but it should have brought me right to St. Peter and brought me right to this man's work list. So that's the intent of the update. If you guys have not seen that happen yet. Any questions yet? You guys are a quiet bunch today. The other change in senior living was now you'll see the scheduling assistant was moved to under the clinical out from reports. That scheduling assistant is the, which you'll see throughout the evaluation, will help you if you're trying to do some scheduling of baths or laundry, trying to get rid of those paper lists that we have. Because we don't want you to use the paper. We want you to come in here and really try to keep everything in Care Assist. And you'll see now I have all my baths scheduled for my community, and it tells me what time they're scheduled. And if I hover over the number, it will tell me who is scheduled. So if I go to Wednesday and I know I have 2 baths already, it'll tell me who those 2 residents are. And so I can easily see that I have 3 baths this morning. I have 3 here, but I only have 1 on Tuesday. So when that resident is new, I can say, you know, I have a lot of openings on Tuesdays or Fridays. Is that okay to put your bath on that day? Because we're trying to be person-centered also. So I can make those recommendations. So it's a nice little feature. You'll also notice that when you're doing an evaluation and you are finalizing it, it's going to trigger you to go to the service plan and finalize the service plan. So that's a nice little reminder for those who have trouble finalizing your service plans after the eval. And then you're also going to see some new print options under the evaluation, but we should never print the evals. I think there's only one state that prints everything. And that would not be Minnesota or North Dakota, I believe. I believe it's just Illinois, but you can do a print now of everything. So you only have to print once. You don't have to go to everything. So for Illinois, who has to print the eval and the service plan, it's a little bit easier for you. And then I think in the next month or 2, we're gonna start seeing this change. These launcher, they're gonna be words instead of the pictures. That hasn't come out yet. That is coming up. They didn't quite have it ready for the last release. Let me see, what else did we? Let's see, what's still pending? The discharge summary roster for Matrix for Minnesota. They said they're hoping to have it done by the July release. The Minnesota MDH roster was reconnected to the new eval, although it's still not updated with the right. It's not pulling the census for initial. It's doing the last evaluation date for start of services. They're working hard on getting that corrected. That's been an issue for us. Still working on if therapy can connect to the documents section of Matrix. We're having some issues with privacy laws for the IL residents. Person-centered wellness questionnaire is fixed and copying over. Duluth, I have to see if your scheduling assistant is now working. It was supposed to be corrected and I have not had the opportunity, but I will get on today and check that. In Illinois, North Dakota, if you're on, I have these verbiages about cancellation, rescheduling, and refusal of services. So if you have scheduled services and they're not letting you know ahead of time, we can put that into your service plan that they're still responsible for those charges. I have that for North Dakota also, and Missouri. North Dakota, the AL eval, we have 2 questions not working. We're almost through all the evals, so I'll be able to correct that and push out a new evaluation for you. And then Missouri, question 90 is still not working. That's really all I have for today. If you guys have any questions or you want me to look at something for you, or.
I have a question. So 2 of the things that the surveyors didn't see for us was charting on where exactly the medications are stored and who exactly is giving the each medication, the unlicensed or the licensed person. And so they were expected to see that in the evaluation, the medication evaluation.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in the evaluation, and let me go ahead and let's just open one on the demo site. So there's 2 things. We build our med management plan as we do our evaluation. So let me just open one up. Jane, we're gonna make her new. Every question has the scheduled question has a place that you put in who is responsible for that care. And this actually gets missed a lot. When you're showing them your service plan, you should be showing them where and it's every state. Most states have this regulation. So when I'm doing my med administration questions and I put in how many times I'm going to do it. Oh, yeah, see, we lost that when we took that off. So we should maybe start putting that in, that the resident assistant is doing it. So we lost that ability when we unscheduled that question. So here, when we schedule the med setup, that question is care by comes up. So now we lost that when we unscheduled that question. So we're gonna have to manually put in who is administering those meds. That is a really good point. Then at the end of your, in your service plan language, it's already preset up I'm gonna have to go, I don't think I put it in ours. Let me see if I probably don't have the updated language in the demo site, but let me see if I threw it in here. So in your end of your, or at the beginning of your service plan, when you print, here is your treatment therapy plan. This is everything, and it says that any therapy plan that you have, the details will be in the orders. So your vitals, your COVID vitals, or if you have a blood pressure and it's over 150, they're supposed to notify the nurse. That detail is going to be in the actual order. Then down here is your med management plan. And I hope you guys are reading these, because this is saying how we manage our medications. And so the description of storage is in here per your community. So if you have med cards, you're going to have a standard that you have med cards. If it's a standard that you have medications in the room with a locked cupboard and a secondary locked storage for control, that paragraph is in here for you. And when we made these, each community went through this to make sure that they were accurate. So if you've changed, you need to let me know, and then I can change this. Discrepancies in narcotics, how you identify things that are missing, all that information is through the whole med management plan. You have how often we do the assessments. You have your supervision, that staff will be supervised within 30 days of their employment. That language is in here. Your contingency plan is in here. So if that's different, you need to update your service plan, let me know. But you always have these care buys throughout the service plan. And so that's what we're missing now with the medication. So we're gonna have to add that manually. Oh no, care buy will come out on the service plan. So it does come out when you print that, because it defaults to resident assistance every time. So that's where you would see it, Marshall.
So yeah, and so I did show them the beginning part, like the standard part about where the meds are stored, but she wanted to see it like on the assessment, like where she said it has to be on each individual person. So
only if it's no, and they're wrong about that.
Okay.
If you have a refrigerated med, there's a quick note that states that. If you have something special,
Yeah.
then yes, you would put it in the evaluation. And that's why that quick note says that, to identify you, so that you know in that question. Let me go back to that for you. Because most people are just standard. And in that question of their med setup, it's asking you if you have any special storage of meds. You are supposed to put that in your quick note. That's where you're building the rest of that self or that person-centered care. So in this example, if they have eye drops that need refrigerating, then I'm going to put it in here. But that's why you have that middle quick note.
Yep.
To address those special storages or refrigeration. And that's up to each one. You have to put that detail in there. If you're doing a med box setup for a week, you're going to put it in this quick note area. If it's not a standard med card, every month they come in, we exchange them. Your detail for that nurse is in this section. So it's addressed both places.
Okay.
So we are covered.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, well, we can end it then if you guys don't have anything else you want to see or go over. Again, I appreciate you